The first time my life exploded, it started with one sentence and one chipped mug. We agreed to let her stay, but if she keeps acting like this, I am done. I was 10. My feet did not reach the floor, my hands wrapped around a hot chocolate in a crowded cafe. My mom thought I was zoning out, doodling on a napkin. I was not. I heard every single word she hissed into her phone. She did not say my name. She did not say, my daughter. She said her, like I was some unwanted guest the adults had voted on. I watched her slide a thick envelope across the table to the man sitting opposite us. He did not look at me either. He counted pages, nodded, and said something about guardianship options and access to funds in that calm, adult voice that always means you are in trouble even if no one says it out loud. That afternoon, my mom told me we were going to visit my grandparents for a while. 3 days later, I was gone. To the outside world, I disappeared. Flyers, news alerts, whispers at school. People shaking their heads and saying, poor Julia, after everything she has been through. 9 years after that sentence in the cafe, another envelope showed up at my mother's front door. Plain, brown, with my handwriting on it. Inside was a mug she had once promised would always be ours. A photo from the day she decided I was a problem to be negotiated. A copy of my dad's will. And a small black drive that would burn down every lie she had built her life on. When she opened that box, the entire house spun into panic so loud that even the neighbors heard it. If you want to know how a 10-year-old girl turned from a bargaining chip into the person who dismantled her own mother's perfect life piece by piece, stay with me until the end. My name is Chloe, and the day my mom dropped me at my grandparents' house will always feel like being carried to a return counter. She packed my suitcase without asking what I wanted to bring. No sketchbook, no favorite sweater, just school clothes, a few books, and that same fat envelope from the cafe, tucked neatly on top like it deserved the best seat. In the car, she kept repeating phrases adults use when they are hiding something. This is for your own good. You need structure. We all agreed this is best. We who? When we pulled up to my grandparents' house, they were already waiting. My grandmother rushed out, wiping flour off her hands. My grandfather stood on the porch, arms folded, jaw tight. Their eyes flicked from me to my mom, and for a second I felt like the package, not the person. Inside there were hugs and forced smiles, but the air around the grown-ups crackled with something sharp and exhausted. They sent me upstairs with my suitcase. I pretended to unpack. Really, I pressed my ear against the door. Voices drifted up from the small office below. You cannot just dump her here, my grandfather snapped. She is a child, not a project. My mom's voice was lower, but not soft. We agreed to let her stay with me, remember? That was the deal. I kept everything together after he died. I have earned some control. Then came the line that stole the last piece of safety I had. If she keeps acting like this, I am done. You can take her. Sign whatever you need. I am tired of being the bad guy. Whatever you need. Like my life was paperwork. I crept down the hallway to the top of the stairs and shifted until I could see into the office. The envelope from the cafe was sliced open on the desk. Pages fanned out like a deck of very expensive cards. I saw my name printed in bold on the first page. A trust. Numbers with too many zeros. Conditions. My dad's name and the words, for the benefit of my daughter, Chloe. My father, who was always just a framed smile and a tragic story of drunk driving in our house. My grandfather jabbed at the paper. He set this up for her education. You were supposed to use it for Chloe, not for granite countertops and retreats. My mom's face hardened. Those renovations kept a roof over her head. I did what I had to do. You think raising her alone is free? My grandmother's voice was quieter, but there was steel underneath. He never wanted this. You know that. He, my father. The one who apparently had opinions no one shared with me. My chest burned. I backed away from the stairs before anyone could catch me spying and shut myself in the guest room. I stared at my reflection in the mirror above the dresser. Same brown eyes as my dad's photo. Same crooked front tooth. I tried to imagine what it felt like to be talked about like a line item on a budget. Whatever you need. Sign whatever you need. Let her stay. Or not. If the people who are supposed to fight for you talk about you like a contract they regret, what exactly are you supposed to feel in return? I waited until the house had gone quiet, then slipped out of bed. The hallway creaked in one place. I stepped around it. The office door was slightly ajar. The envelope was gone, but a single page had slipped under a paperweight. I slid it free with shaking hands. It was my dad's will. Even at 10, I could read the line that mattered. All remaining funds in the trust are to be used solely for the benefit of my daughter, Chloe. Solely. Not for my mom's new kitchen. Not for vacations I was never invited on. Not for the life she had built while telling me, things are tight this month. That night, I fell asleep clutching that crumpled page under my pillow, and for the first time I understood there was a difference between being loved and being tolerated, because the money came with you. 2 days later, I stopped being a person with an address. It happened on a gray morning that smelled like burnt toast and stale coffee. My mom had gone back to the city for work. My grandparents were doing their best to pretend this was normal, but every time my grandmother looked at me, her eyes shone with something between guilt and rage. I could not stay in that house and pretend I did not know I had been traded. So I ran. I left a note that just said, "I am sorry," because that is what kids like me always write. I tucked my dad's will page, the only photo of him holding me, and a silver keychain he had given me into my backpack. I took $37 from the emergency jar by the stove. The bus station was 3 neighborhoods away. I walked until my feet hurt, until my lungs burned, until the thought of turning back felt more dangerous than whatever waited ahead. I sat on a cracked plastic bench under a flickering light, clutching my backpack like it was life support. I watched buses come and go, none of them going anywhere I recognized. A police officer in a too-big jacket crouched in front of me. "Hey," he said gently, "you look lost. You got a name?" I almost said her, just to see what it felt like to use their word. Instead, I said, "Chloe," and told him the address I had run from. At the station, they gave me hot chocolate that tasted like cardboard and asked the same questions on a loop. "Where are your parents? Why did you leave? Did someone hurt you?" I said, "My dad is dead. My mom agreed to let me stay somewhere else. Everyone thinks I should be grateful." That shut the room up for a second. A woman in a gray suit walked in, followed by a man carrying a worn leather briefcase. The man's hair was messy, like he had been running his hands through it for hours. "Chloe?" he asked. "Yes, I am David," he said. "I am a lawyer. I used to work with your dad." The officer frowned. "We have already notified her mother." David's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And I have already notified the court. There is an existing order regarding this child's guardianship and a trust in her name. Has anyone looked at it?" Half an hour later, they had. The notes on my file used words I did not fully understand yet. Ongoing dispute, misrepresentation, removed from visitation, concerns about misuse of funds. What I understood was this. My dad had tried to protect me with paper, and my mom had treated that paper like an invitation to rearrange the entire game. David sat across from me, elbows on his knees. "You do not have to go back with her tonight," he said quietly. Every muscle in my body went rigid. "But she is my mom." He did not argue with that. "And your father had parents too. They have been trying to see you for years. Your mother told the court it would upset you. She said you refused. Is that true?" "No," I said. The word came out harsher than I meant. "I did not even know they were allowed." His eyes softened. "Then we start there." The next months were a blur of hearings and supervised visits, and long car rides between my grandparents' house and small courtrooms where strangers decided what best interest of the child meant. My mother cried in public, on camera, in front of judges. She talked about losing her husband, about struggling as a single parent, about a daughter who ran at the first sign of rules. The file on my dad grew thicker. So did the one with my name on it. Behind closed doors, documents told a different story. Blood tests proving my dad had not been drunk the night he died. Emails where he begged for more time with me. Bank statements showing money from my trust sliding quietly into personal accounts. No one asked the 10-year-old at the center of it how it felt to overhear your existence discussed like a burden people agreed to take on. In the end, a judge signed a new order. I was to live with my father's parents in another state, while investigations into the trust continued. Officially, I was placed with relatives. Unofficially, I vanished. My mom leaned down in the courthouse hallway, mascara streaked, voice shaking. "You are ruining my life," she whispered. "After everything I did for you." I wanted to say, "We agreed to let me stay, remember?" But I did not. I just watched her walk away, heels clicking like a metronome, counting down the seconds until I could stop being the child everyone argued over and start becoming something else. Life with my dad's parents was nothing like the tiny, curated world my mother had built around me. Their house smelled like coffee and cinnamon and old paint. My grandmother kept her hair in a messy bun, wiped her hands on her jeans, and cried openly at movies. My grandfather whistled off-key and swore at football games. They printed my drawings and taped them to the fridge like they were masterpieces. No one ever said, "We agreed to let her stay." They said, "We are so glad you are here." At first I waited for the catch, for the envelope, for the whispered conversations behind doors. Instead, there was therapy. There were late-night talks about my dad that did not end in silence or blame. David visited once a month at first, then less, dropping off updates about the legal mess my mother had left behind. By the time I was 16, the file with my name on it was thick enough to slam. On my 16th birthday, he handed me a folder of copies. "These are yours," he said. "All of them. You have a right to know." I spent that night sitting on my bedroom floor, papers spread around me like some horrible collage. The police report from the night my dad died. The toxicology results proving he was sober. Witness statements about my mom leaving a bar with someone who was not her husband, while my dad circled the block outside, calling her. Transcripts of messages she had left him. "If you loved us, you would be here. You are a coward. Maybe we do not need you." He had gotten into the car, angry and desperate, and gone looking for her. The crash had done the rest. There were bank statements, too. Pages and pages of transfers from an account labeled Chloe Trust into one labeled with my mom's name. Right beside them were photos from the house I barely remembered, new appliances, a renovated bathroom, trips to resorts I had never been invited on. There was one line in one legal memo that I read 3 times. "The primary custodian appears to be using the child's trust as leverage in both emotional and financial disputes." Leverage. That was what I had been, not a daughter, a pressure point. At 17, I discovered something else. My mother's name on the internet. Not in missing child articles, not in court documents, on glossy websites, in soft focus photos where she posed with other mothers in comfortable sweaters. "Author," the caption said. "Speaker, child psychologist." She had written a book. Hard Truths, Strong Kids. There she was on morning shows, talking about resilience, consequences, and how sometimes children needed tough love to grow. Once I clicked on a video. The host leaned in. "Have you ever lost someone, Julia?" She nodded, eyes shimmering in a way that I now recognized as practiced. "My husband died when our daughter was young," she said. "I had to learn to be strong for her." She struggled. She even ran away once. But I set firm boundaries. I did not let guilt control me. That is how we survived. No mention of the trust. No mention of my dad being sober. No mention of the fact that I had not run away from rules, but from being traded like a broken toy. I slammed my laptop shut so hard the screen flickered. Anger tastes different when you are 17 than when you are 10. At 10, it is hot and wild and blind. At 17, it is cold and precise and looks a lot like a plan. I went to art school a year later on scholarships, and the finally unlocked trust my father had left for me. I learned how to turn feelings into images, how to hide secrets in lines and shadows. I took one elective in digital art and fell in love with the idea that a single image could hold layers beneath the surface. By 19, I was juggling painting classes with part-time work in a digital lab, fixing layouts and playing with code. I started to understand how QR codes worked, how websites could be hidden behind seemingly simple pictures, how a link could be sent to a handful of people and still move like a tidal wave through the right circles. One night, streaming a panel my mother was on, I watched her laugh as she told a room full of strangers, "Kids think they have power when they rebel, but parents, we hold the real power." I paused the video. No, I thought, not anymore. My revenge did not start with rage. It started with a sketch. In the studio after hours, I opened a blank canvas on my tablet and drew the chipped cafe mug from memory. The tiny crack along the rim, the faded logo, the way my 10-year-old fingers had wrapped around it like a shield. Around the mug, I painted lines like legal text, but broken, twisted into barbed wire. In the background, I layered faint shapes: a car's headlights, a hospital corridor, a little girl on a plastic bench at a bus station. I called the piece Agreement. Then I hid something inside it. I generated a QR code that led to a private site David and I built together, a simple, clean page with one promise at the top. This time, the whole story. We uploaded everything: scans of my dad's will, the toxicology reports, the bank statements, the court memos, and a video we edited ourselves. We kept it plain. No flair, no dramatic music. Just time-stamped facts, highlighted lines, and a calm voiceover recorded in a studio booth by one of David's colleagues who sounded like every neutral narrator you have ever heard on a documentary. At the end of the video, there was a short clip of me, now 19, sitting at a table with that chipped mug in front of me. "My name is Chloe," I said. "When I was 10, my mother told someone, we agreed to let her stay." What she did not mention was everything written between those lines. I did not cry. I did not tremble. I just looked at the camera and told the truth. The website had one more tab, locked behind a password only a few people would get. My grandparents on both sides, my uncle, the producer of the show that had made my mom a minor celebrity, and the ethics board at the hospital where she sat on some committee about family care. In that hidden folder were the raw phone recordings David had recovered, including the last voicemail my mom left my dad. Her voice, angry and tired and cruel. "If you loved us, you would be here, instead of babysitting your precious clients. Maybe we do not need you. Maybe she is better off without you." Seconds later, the timestamp for the crash. I listened to that voicemail once, then told David to lock it where I could not touch it unless I chose to. Once the digital part was built, the physical part became easy. David helped me find the exact same model of mug from the cafe. They still sold it online as vintage. My grandmother found the original photo of me at 10, sipping hot chocolate, feet not touching the ground. She scanned and printed it. I printed a copy of my dad's will, the relevant section highlighted. I wrote one sentence in careful, even handwriting on top. "This was the agreement you never kept." Then I printed my painting Agreement on heavy paper, small enough to fit in a box, and tucked the QR code into the bottom corner like a signature. The box itself was plain, brown cardboard. No ribbons, no note saying sorry. Just my mother's full name and address on the label, and my current last name as the sender. On the top of the box, I wrote one line: "We agreed to let her stay. Do you remember what that cost?" I did not need cameras this time. I did not need to spy. When my mom opened the box, she would see the mug and the photo and the will. She would see the painting. She would scan the code. She loved scanning things at events, always eager to show she was up to date. The website would open, the video would play. At the same time, scheduled emails would go out with the link to the public page, journalists, her publisher, the show's booker, the hospital board. And an hour after that, I would walk through her front door with the people she had spent years trying to erase from my life. My father's parents. I did not want to watch her crumble from a distance. I wanted to be there when the story flipped. You understand this will ruin her professionally, David said the morning we finalized everything. She ruined my childhood, I answered. The difference is, she chose her version of the story. I am just taking it away. He nodded once. As long as you know you cannot unsend this. I lived 9 years as a ghost in her narrative, I said. I am not going back in. We mailed the box on a Monday. On Wednesday, the storm hit. We did not need technology to see the panic. We just had to listen. By the time we reached my mom's neighborhood, my phone was already buzzing with notifications from the monitoring email we had set up. The link was being opened in different states, at a hospital network, at a media company, at a publishing house. My grandparents sat in the front seats of the car, hands clasped so tightly their knuckles were white. I sat in the back, fingers worrying the edge of the second envelope I carried. My heart beat faster with every turn we took toward the house I had not seen since I was 10. The driveway was full. My mom's car. Another car I did not recognize. My uncle's old sedan. We could hear raised voices from the sidewalk. My grandmother sucked in a breath. We are really doing this. We already did, I said. This is just the part where they realize it. The front door was half open. We stepped inside. The living room looked like a set from one of my mom's interviews. Tasteful, coordinated, carefully curated. Only now it was also wrecked. The coffee table was buried in papers I recognized even from a distance. Printed emails, screenshots of the website, copies of my dad's will. The mug we had sent sat on its side, a dark ring of spilled coffee spreading across the surface. My mother stood in the middle of the room, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp with panic. I do not know how they got those files, she was saying. It is taken out of context. It is a smear campaign. Yes, I will issue a statement. She turned and saw us. For a second, her face emptied. No practiced expression, no TV smile, just raw shock. My grandfather spoke first. Hello, Julia. She hung up without saying goodbye. What are you doing here? She demanded. But the question collapsed halfway through as her eyes fixed on me. Hi, Mom, I said. The room seemed to tilt. My uncle, standing near the fireplace, swore under his breath. You are alive, my mother whispered, as if she could not quite believe it. You are really here. I have been alive this whole time, I said. You just preferred the version of the story where I was gone. She flinched, then recovered enough to straighten her shoulders, slipping into the posture she used on camera. You cannot just show up like this, she said. The police looked for you. I thought someone took you. I was terrified. Until it became convenient to leave the story unfinished, I answered. A missing daughter makes a powerful chapter in a book about resilience, right? My uncle stared at the printed pages on the table. They know about the trust, he muttered, about the transfers. My mother's jaw clenched. Those records are not public. They have to be fake. They are not, David said, stepping out from behind my grandparents. He had let us go in first, giving us the moment we needed. Now he held up a folder. We got them legally. You remember signing the releases. Her eyes flashed with something ugly. You had no right to share them. He did not raise his voice. Your husband hired me to protect his daughter. The court agreed. You misused her money, lied about his death, and built a public persona on a story that erased both of them. The people funding your platform deserve to know who they are working with. My grandmother on my father's side stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she did not back down. You showed us one email years ago, she said. You said it was from Chloe, saying she hated us, that seeing us hurt too much. Was that fabricated too? My mom opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she seemed to understand there was no angle left. I was trying to protect my stability, she said finally. You were trying to take her from me. You were using her like a guarantee, my grandfather replied. You were using Mark's death like a shield. My mother turned to me, eyes wet and furious. "You have no idea what it was like," she said. "I was grieving. I was alone. I did what I had to. You did what you wanted," I replied. "You told everyone my dad was drunk when he died, when you knew he was not. You told me his parents did not care about me when they were fighting to see me. You spent money he left for my future, then called it sacrifice." Her voice rose. "I fed you. I clothed you. I paid for therapy. With my own trust," I said. "You made me grateful for resources that were legally mine." The words hung in the air like smoke. My uncle finally spoke up, eyes flicking between us. "I recorded this statement because I could not watch you lie anymore," he told her quietly. "I was there the night you said you would sign her away if it meant you could start over. I heard you say she was too much work." My mother looked like he had slapped her. "You promised you would never tell," she whispered. "You promised a lot of things," he answered. "We saw where your promises led." On the table, my painting lay face up, the mug in the center surrounded by broken lines of text. My mom picked it up with trembling hands. "What is this supposed to be?" she asked. "The agreement we lived under," I said. "The one I did not sign but paid for anyway." She saw the QR code in the corner and let out a bitter laugh. "Always so dramatic," she said. "Just like your father. Turn everything into performance." "No," I said. "This is not drama. This is documentation." She looked around the room, at the people she had spent years controlling, narrating, rearranging. "You are going to destroy me," she said, voice cracking. "My career, my reputation, everything I worked for. For years you made me the villain in your story," I replied. "The difficult child who ran away, the proof that your tough love was necessary. I am just returning the narrative to its rightful owner." My grandmother from my father's side put a hand on my shoulder. "We did not come here to watch you be cruel," she murmured. "I am not," I said, and I believed it. Cruelty is calling a child a burden and spending her inheritance on your image, then selling that as love. My mother sank onto the edge of the couch, the fight draining out of her. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now." The word tasted like open air. "Legally," David said, "there will be consequences. The trust will be restored. The board will decide what to do with your positions. You will have to correct the public record about your husband's death if you want any chance of keeping your license." "And personally?" she asked, eyes on me. Personally was the 10-year-old in the cafe, feeling like a bargaining chip. Personally was the teenager watching a woman on TV call herself a hero while talking about a daughter she no longer had. Personally was this moment, standing in the middle of her carefully arranged living room with the truth finally louder than her story. "Personally," I said, "I am not here to fix you. I am here so you cannot pretend I never existed." Her shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked less like the composed professional and more like a woman whose scaffolding had been knocked away. "If there is anything left under all of this," I added, gesturing to the papers, the mug, the painting, "you will have to find it without using me as your excuse." My uncle sat down heavily in an armchair. My grandparents moved closer together, a small island of steadiness in a room that had never really been stable. I placed the second envelope on the table. This one was thin, with her name written in the same careful handwriting. "It is a statement," I said. "One you can sign, admitting what you did with the trust and correcting what you said about my dad. Whether you sign it or not, I am going to be fine." Her fingers hovered over the envelope. "And if I do sign?" she whispered. "Then, maybe one day, we can talk again," I said. Not as a therapist and a case study, not as a martyr and a villain, just as two people who finally stopped lying about what happened. I did not wait for her answer. As we left the house, the neighbors' curtains twitched. Phones buzzed. Somewhere, someone was pressing play on the video again, watching my family's carefully arranged story fall apart at the seams. Revenge did not feel like fireworks. It felt like stepping outside for the first time after a storm and realizing the air is finally clear. You would think the world would explode when a woman who built a career on honest parenting gets exposed for lying about almost everything. It did not explode. It cracked, quietly and steadily. Her morning show pulled her segment from their site. The hospital announced that she had chosen to step down to focus on personal matters. The publisher listed her next book as indefinitely delayed. In private emails, some people wrote things like, "We are shocked," and "This does not align with our values." In public, no one said my name. That part still stung. The investigation into the trust dragged on for months. Paper moves slower than rage. But eventually, David called me into his office with a small smile that looked like relief and exhaustion stitched together. "They are restoring everything," he said, with interest. "And your mother has signed the statement." He handed me a copy. My mother's signature sat at the bottom of a page that used precise language, misuse of funds, inaccurate characterization of my father's death, misrepresentation of my relationship with my paternal family. There was no apology in the legal text. There never is. But the act of signing it was a kind of confession. I walked out of his office with a stack of papers heavier than any box I had ever sent. A week later, a letter arrived at my grandparents' house. The return address was my mother's, the handwriting shaky but familiar. "Dear Chloe," it began, "I do not expect you to forgive me. Not now, maybe not ever. I convinced myself for a long time that I did what I had to do to survive. Seeing it all laid out, I cannot pretend anymore that I did not hurt you. I am sorry." She wrote about fear, about grief, about how easy it had been to believe her own version of events once people praised her for being strong. She admitted using my story as material. "I told myself I was helping other parents," she wrote. "Really, I was hiding from what I had done to my own child." At the end, she wrote, "If you ever want to talk, I will be here. If you never do, I will live with that. For once, you get to decide." I folded the letter and put it in a box with my dad's will, the photo from the cafe, and the silver keychain. In my art class, I started a new series. Large canvases, all based on contracts. Adoption forms, prenuptial agreements, leases. Every one of them had a child's silhouette somewhere in the composition, sometimes obvious, sometimes hidden. I called the series Fine Print. At the opening of my first small gallery show, people walked past the paintings and made noises art people make when they are trying to sound deep. One woman stood in front of the piece based on my dad's will for a long time. "It feels like someone is trying to step out of a document," she said, "like they realize their whole life is written in someone else's handwriting." I smiled and said, "That is close." Later that night, sitting on the porch with my grandfather, he asked the question that had been hanging there ever since we mailed the box. "Do you feel better?" he said, "now that she has lost so much?" The honest answer was not simple. Sometimes, I admitted. Sometimes I replay the look on her face when she saw the will and realized other people knew, and I feel like I can finally breathe. "And other times?" he pressed gently. "Other times I wonder if I went too far," I said. "If I could have just taken the money back quietly, if blowing up her life makes me just as ruthless as she was." He took a long breath, looking out at the dark yard. "The difference, Lai," he said, "is that you told the truth. She built a life on hiding it. That did not erase the knot in my chest, but it loosened it. At night, I still dream about that cafe sometimes. In the dream, I am 10 again, feet swinging above the floor, hot chocolate cooling in front of me. I hear my mom say, 'We agreed to let her stay,' into her phone, and I feel that familiar drop in my stomach. Only now, Dreamy looks up and sees someone sitting across the table. It is not my mother. It is 19-year-old me, the one who mailed the box. She leans in and says, 'They agreed to let you stay on their terms. One day, you will decide on your own.' The 10-year-old version of me frowns. Does it hurt? Yes, I say, but staying in their agreement hurts more. I wake up with my heart pounding, but there is no panic in the room. Just the soft hum of the fridge down the hall, the creak of old wood, the sound of my grandparents moving around downstairs. For the first time in my life, the word we does not scare me. It feels like something I am part of, not something that might vote me out. My mother still exists somewhere, in a smaller life than the one she imagined. She works quietly now, with families who know her history. Some of them probably judge her. Some of them probably relate. That is not my responsibility to manage. I do not know if I will ever knock on her door again without a box in my hands. What I do know is this: I refuse to keep living in the version of the story where I was the burden, the problem, the girl they agreed to tolerate. If you have ever felt like that child, the one kept out of the real conversation, the one whose future was negotiated without consent, you already understand why I mailed that gift. In the end, my revenge was not just about making her house fall into panic. It was about walking away from the table where my life had been bargained over and finally sitting somewhere I chose. Where we meant people who wanted me to stay, not people who had simply agreed to.